Hey designers, and welcome back. Happy Monday to you all. You know what that means. Go grab your favorite cup of hot cocoa, a few of your favorite cookies, pull up a chair and sit and chat with me a while in today's episode of Cocoa and Cookies. Well, hope you all had a great weekend. Hope you stayed warm wherever you are. We were cold here in Florida, which means I know most of you probably were too, because if we get cold, everybody's cold. And it was cold, 29 degrees yesterday when we stepped outside to head to church. My door was frozen shut on my car. Never had that happen before. Kind of an interesting experience there, but yes, it was cold. Little cool this morning, not as cold as yesterday, but still pretty cool. And I'm actually loving it though, I gotta tell you. It's been uncharacteristically hot, so I'm enjoying having the cooler weather. My mug today, let's see if I can show you guys all the way around. I've had this mug for 28 and a half years, you guys. That's right, 28 and a half years. We bought this mug on our honeymoon. And it looks like it might have a slight little crack right there. I better check that before it starts leaking on everything. We bought this mug on our honeymoon up in Pocono, Pennsylvania. We went to Caesar's Palace in the Poconos. We went to Paradise Stream Resort up there. So much fun, so romantic. Absolutely had a great time. But anyway, we bought this there and have had it ever since. So that's been in the family ever since the beginning. All right, we're gonna jump right on in. I sent the call for questions out earlier today. We're gonna start over on Facebook. And if you guys don't follow me on these social media outlets, I always have those linked for you down below. You're gonna wanna give us a follow in all these places because periodically I will post these call for questions, and this is where I take everything you want to know to give you the answers to. So this morning I did that and we've had some questions come in. So let's just get started. On Facebook, we have a couple questions so far. One of them is, who do you think has had the biggest impact on your faith? That's a great question. Because we are constantly influenced by people around us. So obviously the first answer to that would of course be my parents, because I was blessed enough to be raised in a Christian home, and I was blessed enough to be raised in a home where my parents lived what they said they believed, because, you know, we meet a lot of people and see a lot of Christians who claim to have faith in Christ or who claim to live their life according to the scriptures, but then they really don't. Like, their lives do not match their words, if you know what I mean. And that causes a lot of confusion for kids. In our case, growing up, my parents absolutely practiced what they preached. They lived it in front of us, and that has had tremendous impact on my life. Absolutely. It taught me character and integrity, and it taught me how to truly live out what we believe as far as the important things to Christ, because I saw that modeled all the time. The second person that has had a great impact on me is a pastor that we had. He had come to our church in 2000, I believe. He was here from 2000 to 2002. Not a real long period of time that he was in our life, but the short period of time that he was. His name is Scott Reese, and I don't think that he watches the videos, but if you happen to be watching Pastor Scott, you and Miss Wanda, I've told you this on many occasions, that sitting up underneath his ministry for that short period of time had a profound impact on me as an adult, and it changed the way that I saw a lot of things, just the anointing on his life and the way that he opened up scriptures in a new way, things that I'd never seen or really thought about in the Word before, because by this time I was almost 30 or right at 30, and so I had gone through my young adult years in one of those states like I was talking about a few minutes ago. I said I loved the Lord and was in church every week, but I was not living it. It had become a legalistic religious thing for me to show up and attend church to say I had been there, but my heart really was far from God. And when he came, there was such such an anointing on his life that radically changed the way I was thinking at that time and brought me into a newness in my walk with Christ. And it was up underneath his ministry where I really started feeling the call for ministry myself, and it just allowed the Lord to do a deep, deep work in me. So he is absolutely a great mentor in my life as well, and had a huge impact on the way that I see a lot of things, and am forever grateful that God brought him our way. So he and my parents are the two that have probably impacted me more than anybody else. Great question. Love that question. All right. The next one on Facebook says, do you have any advice for ladies whose husband doesn't attend church with them and how to keep going? That's a really great question, Samantha. And yes, we do see this a lot in ministry. A lot of times women will come to know the Lord before their husbands will. And a lot of times, let's just be honest, a lot of times young girls, young adult girls will have a relationship with Christ, fall madly in love with a guy who does not, and they begin their relationship unequally yoked from the very beginning. And then it's tough because she believes that she's going to be able to win him over, and that once they get married, the fairy tale of love is going to bring him into alignment with her thinking as far as faith is concerned. And that very often does not happen. That's why the Bible discourages being unequally yoked. But for women who come into faith after marriage, you know, you're married and neither of you necessarily have faith, or you're kind of on the same plane as far as that goes, then you go into a deeper place in your walk with God, or you come to know Jesus for the first time ever, but your husband doesn't want part of that. That can be a challenge. It really can, because in some drastic cases, not all, but there are some cases where husbands put their foot down, so to speak, giving their wives a hard time if their wives go to church, or they give their wives a hard time for being in a relationship with Jesus. There are men who, because they have not yielded their life to Christ, live in a way that's contrary to the word. The wife now becomes a Christian, and she wants to align her life with the word. Naturally, that brings a clash, a big clash, because light and dark have no fellowship together. And so as we're changing and growing our relationship with Jesus, and someone whom we're close to does not, that obviously brings a lot of conflict in a lot of ways, because things that your husband wants to do, you no longer may feel right doing. Places he may want to go, you no longer feel comfortable going. And it can be a huge clash. But here's what I know about God. When you honor him and put him first and genuinely live the faith you say you have, he has a way of helping to work that out. And he has a way of taking your sincere example and using it as the greatest tool ever to win your husbands over. And the reason I know this is because it tells us this in the word. In 1 Peter chapter 3, Peter is giving us some instructions, and he's talking to us a little bit about the marriage relationship in that chapter. And one of the things that he says is that when a wife will continue with godly conduct in front of her husband, that the Lord can then use that as a tool to win over many. Now, it doesn't mean all of them will. And some of you I know may be watching this today and you feel like you've given a good example in front of your husband for a long time, and your husband is making no strides in that area. Let me just say this. If you're at the place in your relationship where he's not giving you a hard time about going to church, he's not picking at you, he's not refusing to let you go, and those kind of things, then yes, God has obviously been using your conduct as an example. But here's what I need to say to that, because so often I will hear people give the advice or take on the philosophy that a wife puts her husband first above everything, and if he doesn't want her to go to church, she shouldn't go, and she should spend the time with him instead, and yada yada. I disagree with that, because the Bible commands that we forsake not the assemblings of ourselves together, and even more so as the day draws near. Attending church and being connected to a fellowship of believers is vitally important to our spiritual growth. Vitally important. God sets shepherds over our lives that we typically call pastors, who he has given a spiritual authority to help look after us. And there is a covering and there is a level of protection that happens in that. You will know as well as I do that the Bible often refers to us as sheep. And if you think of it in the natural, when a little lamb or even a grown sheep wanders away from the rest of the flock, that is where they are most vulnerable for attack from wolves and other predators. It's when they're together in the flock that they are less susceptible to that kind of attack. And it's the same way in our spiritual lives. When we pull away from church and we think we can do it on our own, and I'm going to read the Bible on my own, watch internet TV, and just do things that way, we are a lot more susceptible to attacks from the enemy, especially if we are in a divided home. Because when our spouse has not yet yielded their life to Christ, obviously, if we don't belong to Christ, we are a wide open target for the enemy to use us because we are not under the protective hand of God. And so if your spouse is in that state, not only are you going to be susceptible to attacks from the enemy that we all face every day, but now you're also a big target even through your spouse. So don't pull away from church. Your first responsibility as a believer, as an individual person, is between you and God. And your obedience to God even usurps your obedience to your spouse. And I know that's hard for some of us to hear because we've been taught differently for so long. But our relationship with God is number one, period. At the end of your life, it's going to be you and God. When you stand before God to give an account of your life, and the Bible tells us we absolutely all will. So when you stand before God to give an account of your life and he is asking you, why didn't you do this? Or why did you do this? Or I asked you to do this, but you refused to do it. You will not be able to look at him and say, but Lord, my husband wouldn't allow me to do that. Because he's going to look back at you and say, who was more important, me or your husband? So obedience to God's word and obedience to God has to take precedence. But you have to be careful that in being obedient to God, you don't become disrespectful or you don't obtain a rebellious attitude towards your spouse. If that makes sense. It's all about the attitude with which we do things, Like if your husband is saying, I forbid you to go to church, I don't want you to be in church, then you can say back to him, honey, I'm in a relationship with God and he commands that I do join in with a fellowship with believers and this is important to me. And although I love you and although I respect you, I cannot disobey God. So I am going to go to church. That is a whole lot different than looking back at your spouse and saying, I don't care what you think, I'm going to church. Can you see the difference? When we can approach the differences or the disagreements that arise in a marriage with one spouse being a Christian and one not being a Christian, when we approach them with a very respectful, kind, loving spirit, which is what a Christian should have anyway, when we approach disagreements with that kind of spirit, then God can get in there in the middle of that and he can begin to work miracles and smooth all that out. So I know this was a long answer to this question, but it's such an in-depth question that I really can't give you a quick answer to. But bottom line is, keep on keeping on with your faith with Christ. Be obedient to his word, maintaining a loving, respectful attitude towards your husband while you're doing it. Because God's going to use that. Your husband will see in you a consistent faith. First of all, wives that skip out of church because they want to go off with their husbands. All that says to your husband is they're more important than God. And it's okay, I can get to church whenever I want to. And it's not really that big a deal. It's not really that important. It's also what it teaches your children. So if you want your children to grow up loving God and having a passion for God, get them in church. Don't skip church for peddly little reasons, because all that does is teach them church is not really that important. And I know church attendance and Christianity are different. Don't get me wrong. You can absolutely be a Christian aside from church attendance, but it is a huge part of the Christian walk. It's commanded in the scriptures. And our children look at that and they see our devotion to God by being in his house, worshiping with believers. They see the commitment level that's there. So keep on keeping on. Do what's right to do. Obey God's word above anything else. You know, submission in marriage, and maybe we'll cover this on a real talk, and I think we have a little bit to a small degree, but submitting to our husbands, or that whole dynamic of a family relationship, never includes submitting to sin or submitting to things that they ask us to do that is contrary to God. Because as I said, when it's all said and done, you may die before your spouse may die before you. The bottom line is, we came into this world alone. We will exit this world alone. And it's going to be us and God. That's it. And whenever I stand before God, I cannot answer for my husband, and I cannot use my husband as an excuse for disobedience to him. So one thing that I do want to interject as far as what a wife should do if her husband is not also serving the Lord is, whenever I say that you obey God before your husband and all that, also use a little wisdom in there, because I never would say or suggest to you that you put yourself or your children, if there are any children, in harm's way. So if your husband is a very abusive guy and an explosive guy, and maybe he hits you if you decide you're going to go to church, first of all, you need help in that area. Do not stay in an abusive situation where you're putting yourself or your children in harm's way. But secondly, don't be so defiant in that you would put yourself in jeopardy, physically harm, to step out and go to church or those kind of stuff. You really need to seek some help if that is the extreme issues that you're facing. But I wanted to interject that because I know sometimes whenever we offer advice and we offer counsel to people, they try to implement that and things get really, really bad. We don't want you to be in a hazardous situation. So hope that all makes sense to you there. Hopefully that helps. Definitely read 1 Peter chapter 3. It'll kind of encourage you in there. And if you have any more questions about that, feel free to email me, DeeVineDeeZine@yahoo.com, and I'll be happy to discuss it with you some more. But great question. So now let me refresh this and see if there's any more at Facebook. I love these Cocoa and Cookies where you guys are sending in questions, because you guys send me in some questions about a lot of topics that I probably would not think to discuss. And that's pretty cool. So let me hop on over to Instagram. We're going to see some questions over there. Let's see how we're doing on time. All right, we've got a little bit more time here. A few great questions on Instagram as well. I'd already checked Twitter. Nothing on Twitter, but we will check again before we sign off. I think most of you kind of hang out in Facebook and Instagram world and not so much on Twitter, I think. All right, let's see here. What is your favorite thing and worst thing about being on YouTube? Great question. My favorite thing, we'll start there. We'll start with the positive, okay? My favorite thing about being on YouTube is probably twofold. Number one, I have really enjoyed getting to meet and know a lot of you guys. That has been pretty fun. I love interacting in the comments with you guys. I know I'm getting a little slower at it because we've been so busy that it's kind of taken me a day or two to get to you, but I do love interacting in the comments and reading the comments. So I've enjoyed that, getting to know you guys. That's been really fun. And I also enjoy that YouTube gives me a way to be able to express my creative side, whether it's through DIYs or even just through creating and editing the videos. Like back at Christmas, we did a video for you guys, the top 5 gifts from Dollar Tree this season, or I can't remember exactly the title that I had given it. I'll find it, link it for you down below. That was just fun and spoofy. I think some people thought I was serious. That video actually got several thumbs downs, which surprised me because it was just a funny little comedy thing. So I don't know if people thought I was serious, that some of these gifts would be real gifts and they were like, lady, you are crazy, or if they just didn't like the silliness of it. I'm not sure what they didn't like about it, but anyway, that was fun. And that was just kind of a little creative thing we did. Editing the vlogs and putting them to music and different things like that. It just gives me a way to express my creativity because I love to create whatever it is. I just love that. So YouTube gives me the ability to do that, and it also gives me the ability to learn and know you guys. The thing I hate the most about YouTube would have to be the rudeness of people. Wow. It is amazing to me how empowered people feel when they can sit behind a screen on a computer or on a phone or iPad, whatever they happen to be on, and how emboldened and brazen they can be, thinking they're never going to meet you face to face, so they can just say whatever they want to say and be as mean and hateful as they want to be. That, I think, is what I hate the most about YouTube. The way that people judge you and judge your life based on a 5 or 10 minute video, and they see or hear something in your video that they don't agree with, and then they lash out at you. That is just, that's been an eye-opener. That's been an eye-opener. You know, videos that you do and you start getting all these thumbs downs, but then people don't have the guts to tell you why they thumbs it down. That's one thing that I never understand. If you're going to have the guts enough to put a thumbs down, have the guts enough to tell us what you don't like. Some people will thumbs it down because, let's just say that, like whenever I did the video on grief after I lost my grandmother, the thumbs downs that might come to that. It's like, okay, are you thumbs downing because you don't like death and loss and that kind of stuff, so you're relating? Or are you thumbsing down the fact that I lost my grandma and you just don't want me talking about it on YouTube? Like, what are you thumbsing down? You know what I mean? So the judgment you get on your looks, or frizzy hair, or you know, the personality of your family or whatever, that's what I hate the most. It's just how people can feel so emboldened. Most of these people would never say it to your face because they're really cowards, the bottom line is. And yeah, that's been pretty interesting. So the next question says, if you could visit any country in the world, where would it be and why? That's a great question. I've actually been asked that one a couple of times, and every time that question comes at me, I'm in a different season of life and have a different place I'd want to go. So the answer is never the same. So good question there. I think today, if I could pick today any country that I wanted to go to and visit, I don't even know. Today, I think today that my choice is still fairly consistent with what it's been over the last few years as far as wanting to go to India. There's something about that land that is intriguing to me, that is a little mysterious, and I don't know, my heart has just been drawn to India, and I know that so many people over there need the light of the gospel, and I would just love to visit there. So if I had to choose today to go to a specific country and to visit there for a little bit, I think that I would have to go with India. All right, and I think we have time for only one more. So some of the other questions that I had mentioned earlier, I'm just not going to be able to get to today. These questions get away from me sometimes before I know it, because I love to talk and I can turn a 20-second answer into 10 minutes. But anyway, we'll have time for one more. So let's see here what it is. What advice do you have for starting a YouTube channel? What program do you use for editing? And what do you recommend for beginners? Great questions. Great questions. The software that I use right now is just iMovie. I use it on my MacBook Pro, and right now that's all that I have, because getting editing software is quite expensive. So no fancy software yet. I would like to be able to have some of that pretty soon, but no, I just use iMovie right now. For my vlogs, I just use my phone. I have an iPhone 7 Plus, and I film the vlogs just with my phone. Would love to have a vlogging camera. Maybe one day I'll have one. I've got my eye on one, but of course, you guys know right now the priority is our house. You know, when you have bills and you have things you have to do, those kind of luxuries just have to wait. So eventually, hope to have a nice vlogging camera. The camera that we use to film things like this, or the hauls and stuff like that, where we set it on the tripod, is actually my mom's camera. It is a Canon, and I think I have that listed in the description with everything else. Down in the description box, I always have for you guys, like the light systems that I use, where I got it from. I think the camera is listed there, the editing information, all that's down there. So you'll have to look to see specifically which Canon camera, because I can never remember all the letters YouTubers and models and all that stuff. Anyway, this is her camera, and she's letting us borrow it to make some of these videos where we need a little bit higher quality. So that is a blessing to be able to be using that. And so that's what I use to film and to edit. It's very simple, nothing complicated at all. Suggestions for new YouTubers. I think that you need to go into it fully with your eyes open and ask yourself, sit down and ask yourself, what are your expectations? Why are you wanting to start a YouTube channel? And to give yourself a direction to go from there. And to then fully brace yourself and prepare yourself for people will be watching your life. They're going to be watching, even if you choose not to do a vlog where you put your life on display, whatever videos you create. Maybe it's just going to be a DIY channel or a cooking channel. Maybe it's going to be a channel all about hauls, and you know, whatever your specific niche will be. My channel doesn't really have a niche. My channel's just all over the place. But anyway, if you're going to have a specified channel, ask yourself why it is you're wanting to start it, and then be prepared. People are watching it. You're going to have judgment no matter what you do. If you're showing a grocery haul, people are not going to like that you might be feeding your family Cheetos. You know, if you're out shopping or doing a vlog and they see you stop into a ice cream shop to get ice cream, people are going to comment, you're too fat, why are you eating ice cream, that's not healthy for you. Somebody's always going to have an opinion on your life. And the reality is, if you're opening your life and putting it out there, you have to be prepared for that. So that is a huge one. Mentally prepare yourself ahead of time, because it can be rough. Some of the comments that come in can be very hurtful. You just got to accept it for what it is and just let it roll off your back. I also think that I know that people disagree with this, because there's a lot of people out there, especially YouTube experts, that will tell you just jump out there and get started. And that is true to a degree, because good night, you can go back, you can even go back to my videos from 6 months ago, and the way that they have improved tremendously, because I had no idea what I was doing, especially at the very beginning. So yes, you do have to finally just get to that point where you have the courage to just jump on out there and just go ahead and start doing it. However, I do think you need to have a little bit of knowledge before you just jump out there as well. You know, like whenever I first started doing the nail art tutorials, which is kind of how the channel started, I at least had a good knowledge of how to explain what I was doing. I had a good knowledge of what I was doing, and it wasn't like I just sat down on camera and started painting my nails one day, if that makes sense. So I think that you do at least have to have a little bit of knowledge about what it is that you're doing before you just do it, because, you know, this is the thing. If you're starting a channel, you want people to watch it. And if your videos are not at least showing people that you at least know a little bit about what you're doing so that they can be patient while you're learning, then they're not going to stick around. They're going to say, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. What are they thinking? And they will never come back to check you out. So yeah, that's my suggestion, because I'll watch a lot of videos and I see people, there's a couple groups on Facebook, and I try to warn people of that when they ask the question. Then everybody else comes back and they answer, no, that's not true. Just get started. Just do it. Just do it. But sometimes that's the worst thing you can do. You don't want to just jump out there and, you know, practice. If you're just wanting to do haul videos, I don't know what kind of videos you're wanting to do, but let's just pretend you're just wanting to do a haul video and that's all you want to do. Sit down with your camera, do a haul video, and watch it back. And then ask yourself, is this something that I would want to watch? Because that's what I always do. When I'm creating my videos, I ask myself, is this something that I would want to watch? And if it is, and you feel like, oh yeah, I would sit here and watch that for 10 or 15 minutes, then do it. But if you think, I would never watch that, that was so bad, then just practice a little bit more. Because you don't have to be in a hurry. Practice, and you'll get the hang of it. All right, and then let's see, there was one last part of her question. I guess it was just what program do I recommend for beginners to use? When I very first started out, I had a Windows computer, and I just used what was it called on the old Windows system? Movie Maker, I think is what it was called. Whatever program came on the Windows operating system, that's all I used when I very first started. Because there are ways that you still can take inexpensive software or software that doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, you still can take that and blend it to still make a pretty good video. So if all you have is Windows operating, get on there and in your Windows Movie Maker. Sometimes you can use through the PowerPoint programs, you can do a few things through there. A lot of the intros that my son makes for me, like right now the intro that not the Cocoa and Cookies one, but the one that I have for most videos with just the pictures on there, he did that through PowerPoint. So there are some things that you can even do through PowerPoint that you would be able to interject in your videos as well. So my recommendation for beginners is use what you have. Don't go spending a lot of money because it's expensive to start getting that kind of stuff. And if you decide YouTube's just not for you, now you've invested all that, and what you're going to do with it then. You know what I mean? So start with what you have and just perfect it, and then grow as you go. That's what I've done. Started with Movie Maker, then when I got my MacBook Pro, I moved right on into iMovie, and that's still what I'm using. So there you go. All right, so I think that's all the questions for today. This might have even gone over the 30 minutes that I tried to limit it to, and I'm so sorry. Some questions, though, I just can't answer quickly. Some answers require a little bit of lingering there. So anyway, hope you were able to stick around. I do want to thank you so much for watching these. I've had fun with Cocoa and Cookies lately because I love the questions and answering everything you want to know. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bid you all a good day. I'm going to get off of here and get some work done around the house here. I will be announcing the winners of the giveaway sometime this afternoon, so be watching the channel for that. That's exciting. And hopefully I'm going to finally get to start working on getting some of this Christmas down. We'll just have to see. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for sitting here with me today. Remember, you were created for purpose, so go and be all you can be. We'll see you soon in the next video.